Let's continue on with this 272. Got a bolt repair here that I did. We're going to ignore that for now, but I was just fiddling around with these not the case bolts. I was just fiddling around with the cylinder head bolts. Sure enough, they're the same as the 394, but here and here they don't appear to be through hole, and it looks like there's enough room for them to come through, but they want to stop. Now, that's not a big deal if you're not going to drop the cylinder head, but if you're going to drop the cylinder head and these bottom out before they seat the whole cylinder head down, you're going to have an air leak. And I've done that multiple times and made that mistake multiple times. So what we actually have to do is probably tap these just a little bit further. Now, before we do that, we've got this. Sweet. Okay. This is actually from a Johnson, supposedly. But it's a pretty good looking top end. Needs to be polished up a bit. Polished, ported, and I'll do the whole shoot here, but what I wanted to do was get squish and see where we're at there. So this was a forget the model, I think it's a 630. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on the similarities between Johnson and Husqvarna. This carburetor's been kind of messed up a little bit. Whatever. I want to get a squish number, so let's do that. Exhaust bolts, let's see. 5mm. Good. So that all looks fine. What I'm going to do is get a squish number with this. I'm going to stick this in the ultrasonic first, though, I think. I'm going to save the gaskets for just in case, and I'm going to hold on to the carburetor for now, but may have to get a different carburetor. So let's deal with the whole tapping issue here. This is actually 1/4 I'm just going to chase this, make sure it actually is a through-hole bolt. And at the very end should cut just a little bit. That's it. Really don't want to get any pieces down in there. Same thing for here. Going to chase this. Again, a 1/4 tap. And it really isn't going to cut right up until now, the very end. Next, we'll try getting the piston on. Got a nice new Meteor 272 piston kit here. What I'm most curious of, does a 372 pin bearing, needle bearing fit? Because I'd rather not use the aftermarket ones. Oh yes it does, that's very nice. Cool, so the 372 needle bearing does fit. So we're just trying the piston on here. Beauty. Goes in great. Okay. No obvious clearance issue. I'm not going to worry about the ring or the clips right now. All I want to do is get a squish number. So I'm going to wait until the cylinder head comes out of the ultrasonic and we'll try it on. I'm going to do a little modification here to this cylinder head. So if you were putting this together, obviously you can skip the whole modification step, but you still want to check the squish. So we're going to check the squish next after I fix this. Most of these OEM cylinder heads have a lip inside here just at the edge. It's a bit of a lip. If you can flatten this whole, what's called the squish band, off a little bit, the compression is better. Now, you can do that on a lathe with a boring bar, but I don't have that right now, so I'm going to use my sandpaper trick, which does work. The problem is this is a 52mm piston, and the only piston that I have is this, except I just happen to have a 181 piston. Now, before you guys say, oh, you know, don't use that. Well, I don't think this is the original piston. Here's how I know, because it says Italy in there. K1S, K15. Is this a Gilardoni? It's a KS cylinder. I'm wondering if this is not the original piston. Very possible not. So I don't think this is the original 181 thin ring, which is highly desirable. I think this is something else. So guess what? I'm not going to worry about messing with it. So let's take the ring out. Let's clean off the top here a little bit. I may just take a file to that because I don't want any high spots. I'm going to clean the top of the piston. We're going to get some sandpaper on this with some JB Weld. Now for some JB Weld and some sandpaper. This sets in only a couple of minutes, so it makes it ideal for this purpose. My opinion. Now you really need some weight on that. There we go. Give it a few minutes to set up. So now I got the piston glued to some sandpaper here. Got to cut it out, that's all. You definitely want to trim off any excess. So if there is excess here, you don't want it. You do want it up to the edge, but not beyond. A little bit of WD-40, or you could use a better cutting fluid, but WD-40 works. Clutch tool on the impact here, not for the impact purposes per se, but spin. Have some silver on there, clean it off. A little more WD-40, rinse and repeat, that's all. And you can basically take this as far as you like, but the problem with a piece of sandpaper is you're not going to get that far that fast. So if you want to take a lot off, you really better stick this on a lathe. And if you're going for ultimate accuracy, also better stick this on a lathe. But you can already see it's getting shiny in there. I would do a couple more goes. And what also happens as you're doing this is you're flattening out the squish band, which really means that you're reducing the size of the combustion chamber, assuming optimal squish. So if you optimize your squish at 20 thousandths, then you can have say, a wide combustion chamber or a narrow combustion chamber. If you're having a narrow combustion chamber, you're going to have better compression. That's really pretty good. I don't know if I'm going to get a whole lot more out of it. So, we're pretty good there. So let's get a squish number. I mean, this is not going to get us 200 pounds of compression, okay? But it might do, 170, 175, that'd be good. Maybe a little better. Here's hoping it fits. Yeah, good. Okay. Ta-da! Good. Get a couple of cylinder head bolts. Put her down. Temporary like. Just easy. Good. We don't have a head slapper, so that's good. The flywheel here is keyed, so we can use that to get pretty good leverage. Looks pretty tight. 19 thousandths. Maybe a little less at the edge. Okay. So what I probably should do is do a little bit more sanding internally. We can just do a straight up base gasket delete here, and we've got it. That's that. Let's make sure it's not really any tighter. About 19 thousandths. So ideally you're supposed to do it on all four corners all at once, but we're going to ignore that for right now. So it probably needs a little bit more room, but then we'll be good. Well, we're set up here, might as well get some good old-fashioned timing numbers. Just my makeshift piston stop. So now what we do is visually get it to top dead center, about there. I make a couple of marks here and here. I use that as my reference. Some guys use a coat hanger. Whatever, this is probably less accurate than a coat hanger, but I am not aiming for super accurate. So let's continue doing a little poor man's porting on this 272. I went and asked for numbers and a formula for doing this, and apparently a pretty good formula is to take 30 thousandths off the squish band, and somewhere around 101, 102 for exhaust, something like a 20 blow down, so that brings us to 121, 122, and 78 intake. But the problem that I have with that is that I'm not going to get quite the compression number, so my exhaust figure would probably be better at like 103. So let's aim for a 103 exhaust and see where that takes us, which puts us at a 123 transfer. Now, I've already marked here how much needs to come off the intake by just putting a little score mark on the piston itself, and it's probably only about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe 2 millimeters. It's not much to get a 78 intake, but we want to flatten that for sure. It's probably kind of concave there, or convex, depending how you look at it. So let's put a ring in this and see what we come up with there. And yeah, let's put a ring in. See if we can get an exhaust number, and then we'll worry about the transfers later. So we take a 52 millimeter ring, old ring, we bring this to bottom dead center, and we fit her back down. Just going to put a couple of screws in, really just for positioning purposes. And then you bring it up to a 103 exhaust. So you have to remember 90, 100, 1, 2, 3. So that's where you want to go, and you don't want to go past. There's 103. Back it off back to bottom dead center. Now you take your head off. And now your ring is exactly where it needs to be. So from the deepest point of the concavity there, probably about a 1/16 of an inch as well, is what we need to take off. Obviously the exhaust is all carboned up. We need to smooth that, figure that out. Don't know if you can see that or not, but so somewhere around there will work brilliantly. And we also have lines here, because this is a used cylinder. We have lines to guide us as far as how wide we want to go. You want to go maybe a millimeter or two away from, see that, which is essentially the edge of the piston skirt. Of course, we're assuming that that line and this line match. Maybe not. And here's our mark at bottom dead center. So we have tons of support here. If you wanted to drop the jug, you could, like a 1/4 of an inch. So now, we're not going to do that, but you certainly could. We're going to take a nice Sharpie and go in here and make our mark right on the ring. And that's the extent that we need to grind to. And the ring makes it nice and flat, you know, so you don't want to be completely flat all the way to the edge, otherwise you're going to hook a ring. So you do want to maintain a little bit of concavity there. While that's drying, we can put this aside because we don't want to get any chips down in there, obviously. Now you can pull the ring out. Now you got a nice line inside there. Grind on down to that. And we just keep going like that. I'll show you the result. So I've got this roughed to where I want it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my split mandrel on my Dremel tool and go in here and start polishing it up. Now on the outside, I really didn't open this up that much. It's not a race saw, so I'm just not going to sit here and grind on it forever to open that up. But I can certainly smooth it all up pretty good with this. So let's check that out. This would be some 50 grit on here. Starts to look nicer. I'm going to get a fresh piece of this, and I'm going to start up my vacuum, and I'm going to do this over there. That's pretty good. So I took it up to with 220 grit on the split mandrel. So it's nice and shiny now. Next, with the diamond, I'm going to take and make a bevel here right at the main lip. polishing. So I'll do some quick polishing with this sanding drum. May need up the straight piece actually. Sanding drum. Nice bevel on there to not work over the rings too bad. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to wash this really good. We're going to put it back on the saw, and we're going to get timing for the transfers. I've got the cylinder head cleaned up. Now what we got to do is we're going to put an old ring in this. Put this to bottom dead center. Take a couple of bolts. Don't want to lose our marks. Okay, so now what we do is we're going to take this and we're going to run it up to where we want it for the transfers. So the exhaust is about 103. So we can check the transfers by running this up to, let's see, we want, if that's 103, then 123 would probably work pretty good. So 90, 100, 110, 123. So I've got my finger on the mark here, and I run it up just to that, back it off to bottom dead center, take the two screws out. So now we have the ring in there, which shows us exactly where we're at for the transfers, and we really don't need to do much at all. Yeah, we really don't need to do a whole lot at all to hit our mark. Take a nice Sharpie. Put it along there. And you have the distance to which you're going to cut to, which really isn't much. Again, move this away. And as usual, to get into the transfers, you really need the right angle. Now, we're not doing that much here. This is very tiny adjustments. Get some light. After that's dried a little bit, pull your ring out. So we're going to go in here and we're going to cut to that line. In this case, you definitely don't need much. I mean, it really is not that significant of an adjustment. Let's see if we can get the polisher in there. May or may not be able to. So these are just the barrel polishers. And unfortunately, they're still a little too big, so I can't really polish this, but I'm going to blend these lowers just a little bit. Ring again. It's more important that these are even than they're spot on. Just the teeniest bit more on this one. Bevel it and we're good. Just a super tiny amount on this and we'll be perfect. Last thing was the intake. Now, on the intake, I can go back to the piston and see that there's about a 1/16 of an inch that I need to take off. So, it's really not that much. It's like the thickness of the ring. So it's really not much. So what we want to do is take our old piston, push it down, basically until we're in the right spot. Now the piston will keep the ring fairly level, so we'll have a nice straight line. Yeah, it's about the thickness of the ring. So right there I've got the ring even with the center of the concavity. So now what I can do is I can take my Sharpie, a little bit of brake cleaner, now I can take my Sharpie and we can let that dry, but now I've got a line that I can grind to. Now I don't want to grind into that black line, but I do want to grind to it. We can also notice that there are the lines from the piston on here. So about here and here. So you can take the intake nearly all the way to that. About 1 millimeter away would be fine. So now we have a line we can grind to. Now this is kind of a funky shaped intake, so you do want to be cognizant of that. So it's going to be getting into this corner that's going to be probably the trickiest thing. Still, let's give it a grind and see. I'm going to do this over on the vacuum, so you'll bear with me. I will come back and show you the finished product.